Okay, so this is the key to section 7.1, 7.2, part A. All right, and so you want to multiply uh, and simplify if possible. Show all work as presented in videos to receive full credit. Okay, so notice that when you're looking at number one, these are all considered monomials. Okay, so you don't see any plus symbols, any addition, subtraction symbols at all. So these are all considered monomial factors. So probably the best thing to do with this problem is just to multiply the numerators together first. So we have 3 times 4 is 12. X squared times y cubed is x squared y cubed. All right, in the denominator, you have 2y times 3x, so that's going to be 6xy. All right, so that's where we're at. So that's probably the best thing you should do first. All right, now we're going to reduce. Okay, so let's start with the coefficients. So we have factors of 12 and 6. So 6 will go to 6 one time, 6 will go to 12 two times. So I can reduce 12 over 6 as 2 over 1. All right, now let's look at the factors of x. I have, in the numerator, I have 2 factors of x. In the denominator, I have 1 factors of x. So it's kind of like if you had x times x divided by x. So you have 2 factors of x divided by x, 1 factor of x. And so these x's divide out, and you're left with 1 times x is x over 1, which is just x. All right, so that's what you would see in your mind. So I have 2 factors in the numerator, 1 factor in the denominator, so that 1 factor down here divides with one of those that's up here, and you're left with only 1 factor left. The same idea with the y's. So I have 3 factors of y in the numerator, 1 factor of y in the denominator. See that exponent is 1. So that factor will reduce with itself and will reduce with y cubed, and you're left with 2 y cubes, or 2 factors of y, excuse me. And now, that's all I can reduce, and so I get 2 times x to the first times y to the second, which is 2x y to the second, divided by 1 times 1 times 1 is 1, so that becomes 2xy squared. So that's the answer to number 1. Number 2 is the same idea. You have monomial factors. So you can't factor these. Remember, the first thing you want to do when you multiply or divide rational expressions is you want to factor if possible. Well, since these are monomial factors, just like these were, I can't factor. I can't now. I can factor 15 as 5 times 3, but that's about all you can do. So leave the monomial factors as they are and just multiply them together. The numerator times the numerator, denominator times the denominator. So when I multiply the numerators, I get negative 5 times 2 is a negative 10, a squared times b squared. In the denominator, I get 3 times 5 is 45, ab cubed. So b cubed times a is ab cubed. And then we'll do the same thing we did with number 1. So if you look at negative 10 and 45, the greatest common factor is 5. So I get 5 into 10 is, 5 and negative 10 is a negative 2. And 5 into 45 is 9. And then when I look at the factors of 8, there are 2 in the numerator, 1 in the denominator. So a will divide into a one time, and a will divide into a squared. One of these a's will divide into one of these a's, and then you're left with 1 factor of a. Over here, you have 2 factors of b and 3 factors of b cubed down here, b down here. So these 2 factors of b will reduce with 2 of these down here, and you're left with 1b. And so if you look at what you have, I have negative 2 times a times 1, which is negative 2a, divided by 9 times 1 times b, which is 9b. So that's the answer, negative 2a divided by 9b. All right, now, in number 3, you have some monomial factors, 7 and 14, but you also some other polynomials as well. So again, the first thing you always want to do is to factor your numerators and factor your denominators. So in the first numerator, I can factor out a 6. Remember, you did that in the previous lesson. So I get 6 times x plus 1 divided by 7 times 14 divided by, and then x squared minus 1 is a difference of 2 squares, so I get x minus 1 times x plus 1. Alright, so once you factor, then you want to reduce your common factors. So my first factor c is 6. 6 will not reduce it to anything down here. My next factor is x plus 1. X plus 1 will reduce with this x plus 1. So when I cross them out, I'm left with factors of 1 in their place. This factor 14 will reduce with a 7. So 7 goes into 7 one time. 7 goes into 14 two times. And then it's all you have. So 6 times 1 times 2 is 12 divided by 1 times x minus 1 times 1 is x minus 1. So 12 divided by x minus 1. Okay, now the next one, again, do the same thing. Factor the numerators, factor the denominators. The only thing I can factor, though, is this one right here, that second denominator. So the GCF here is x squared. So I'm going to have x minus 5 divided by 1 times 7 divided by, all right, when I factor out the x squared, I get x squared times x minus 5. All right, so that's what I have. And then you look at your factors. So I have a factor x minus 5. I have one down here, so those divide out. I have a factor of 7. There's no factor down here that 7 will reduce into, and so you're done. So the answer is going to be 1 times 7 is 7. 1 times x squared times 1 is x squared. So 7 divided by x squared. All right, so that was number 4. Okay, number 5. All right, same idea. You're going to factor the numerators, factor the denominators. So in the first numerator, I can factor out a 2. And I get 2 times 2x plus 1. That first denominator, there's nothing I can do to that. Leave it alone. Over here, that second numerator, I can factor out a 4. And I'm left with 4 times 1 minus 2x divided by, and then 3x plus 2. That's all I can do there. All right, now let's start reducing what we can. All right, so I have a factor of 2 here. There's no 2 down here there's no factor that 2 will reduce into. I have a 2x plus 1. There's no factor down here that will go into. I have a 4 as a factor. Same thing. No factor down here that this 4 will reduce with. All right, I have a 1 minus 2x. Now, I don't exactly see a 1 minus 2x down here, but remember the opposite. I see its opposite. The opposite of 1 minus 2x is 2x minus 1, or a negative 1 plus 2x. Remember, you just take each sign here and change the signs. So the opposite of 1 is negative 1. The opposite of negative 2x is a positive 2x. So what that means, remember, is that when you cross them out like this is a 1. This becomes a negative 1. All right. So remember, we talked about that in the previous lesson. And so therefore, you get 2 times 2x plus 1 times 4 times negative 1. So basically, you're going to have 2 times 4 is 8. 8 times negative 1 is a negative 8. So you get negative 8 times 2x plus 1 divided by 1 times 3x plus 2. All right. Now, just go ahead and leave your numerator in factored form. You don't have to multiply it out unless they tell you to. So the answer is negative 8 times 2x plus 1 divided by 3x plus 2. Okay, so in the next one, you can factor out a 4. So you get 4 times x plus 2. In the denominator, I can factor out a 7x. So I get 7x times 2 minus x. Now remember, always check yourself. 7x times 2 is 14x. 7x times a negative x is a negative 7x squared. Times, like over here, I'm going to factor the trinomial using 2 binomials. And so let's see, that'll be 3xx. The last sign's negative. These signs in here are different. And let's put the 2 here. And so I need the larger of the outer and the inner to be the middle sign, the negative. So in order to get that, this has to be negative, this has to be positive. Positive 1 rather. And so always check yourself. 3x times x is 3x squared. A positive 1 times a negative 2 is a negative 2. The outer is negative 6x. The inner is a positive 1x. When I add them up, I get negative 5x. All right, now this is the difference of 2 squares. So I get 3x minus 1 times 3x plus 1. Okay, now let's reduce. This factor 4 will not reduce with any factor down here. Remember, your factors are 7, x, 2 minus x, 3x minus 1, 3x plus 1. My next factor is x plus 2. I don't see an x plus 2 occurring anywhere down here. My next factor is a 3x plus 1. I see one right here. So when I cross them out, I put 1s in their place. My next factor is an x minus 2. I don't see one exactly like it down here, but I do see its opposite. So that means when you cross them out like this, 1's going to be a positive 1. The other one's going to be a negative 1. And so now I get 4 times 1 times negative 1 is a negative 4 times this factor, x plus 2, divided by 7x times 3x minus 1. 7x times 3x minus 1. Now remember, always leave your denominators factored. You can multiply the numerator out, but just leave it factored. This is your answer. You're done. So negative 4 times x plus 2 divided by 7x times 3x minus 1. Alright, and then finally number 7. When I factor the numerator, I'm going to get x 4, 3, and I need this to be negative and this to be positive. And then in the denominator here, I can factor out a 3. So 3 times x minus 3 times 12 divided by x minus 4. And it looks like in terms of x minus 4, the first factor right here, I see an x minus 4 down there, so I'll cross them out, put ones in their place. They're exactly the same. X plus 3, I don't see an x plus 3 anywhere down here. The next factor is a 12. That 12 will reduce to this 3. So 3 into 3 is 1. 3 into 12 is 4. And so you're done. The answer is going to be 1 times 4 is 4 times this factor times x plus 3 divided by 1 times x minus 3 times 1 is x minus 3. So there's your answer. Alright, so that takes care of, I don't know if I showed you all this, but that's the answer right here. Alright, so that's going to take care of section 7.2, part A.